Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Erickson Kulas. I am the Director of Operations and Programs at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. I've been with the foundation for a little over 5 years now, and I'm excited to talk to you all a little bit more about our work and what we're hoping to accomplish in our Smart Justice Spark Grant cycle. I'll toss it over to my colleague Kenya so that they can introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kenya Miranda Verdugo, and I am the Smart Justice Program Manager here with Michelson 20 Million Minds. I've been with Michelson for almost 2 years now, so this is my second Spark Grant cycle, and really excited to get things started.
Great. So just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. First, we'll provide sort of a high-level description of the work that we do at the foundation, both within our smart justice space, as well as within other initiative areas. We'll then discuss the specifics of our Spark Grant program. We'll talk through what the application review process looks like. We'll highlight some previous awardees so that individuals on this call can get a better sense of the types of projects that we fund. And then at the end, we'll open it up for Q&A. If you do have questions throughout this conversation, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A feature on Zoom. We'll do our best to answer them live, but if not, we'll certainly answer them when we get to the end of today's conversation. So the Michelson 20mm Foundation is funded and was founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. Over a decade ago, Dr. Michelson read a story in a local newspaper about how community college students were unable to graduate simply because of the high cost of textbooks. At the time, he created a scholarship, but realized that that was not adequate to support students in their educational journey. And so because of that, he founded the Michelson 20mm Foundation. Our organization is part of an umbrella organization called Michelson Philanthropies. Our organization is primarily focused on higher education as well as workforce development pathways. Dr. Michelson's other foundations support medical research, animal welfare, as well as he operates a C4 organization, the Michelson Center for Public Policy, that advocates on issues that are important to our foundations, as well as to Dr. Michelson personally. Dr. Michelson made his fortune in inventing medical devices and then patenting those devices. And he has since retired from medicine and devoted himself to philanthropy. So here's just a quick look at our mission statement. We're looking to create a more just world. And we do that in a few different ways. And I'd like to just quickly highlight some of the ways in which we do that before we jump into the specifics of our Spark Grant program. So as I mentioned, Dr. Michelson made his fortune in inventing devices. And so he's very passionate about supporting inventors, entrepreneurs, and students to have a better understanding of the intellectual property system here within the United States. And so he founded the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property, which is run out of the 20mm organization. This organization the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property has created a curriculum that empowers students, entrepreneurs, inventors, and gives them the resources to capitalize on their IP, similar to how Dr. Michelson did. We integrate our content into curriculums that currently exist. We're currently partnered with USC in a course that they run. And again, just giving students and inventors those tools. The other work that we do within 20mm is through impact investing. We primarily invest in for-profit, mission-oriented companies that align with what we are trying to achieve in this world. Primarily, that work is done through Michelson Impact Ventures. And the majority of the companies that we've invested in are in and around the educational sphere. I'll briefly touch on 3 other areas of work that we do within 20MM. Excuse me. And then I'll toss it over to my colleague Kenya to talk a little bit more about the Smart Justice Program. Our Student Basic Needs Initiative seeks to support students as they persist through higher education. This initiative has a particular focus currently on pregnant and parenting students. So one of the particular populations that we're looking to support are pregnant and parenting students within the higher education systems here in California, putting in place supports, policies, et cetera, that would allow them to thrive, get their degree. As I mentioned, we sort of got our start within the textbook affordability space. And so another initiative of ours is our Open Educational Resources Initiative. There we look to eliminate the cost of textbook as a barrier for students to be successful within their higher education journey. And we primarily do that through advocating for open educational resources, or OER. Those are openly licensed, high-quality educational content that is primarily available for free, definitely online, and then usually for an extremely low price if a print version is available. OpenStax is one of the best examples of OER, and actually one of our earliest partners and a strong collaborator of ours. And then the last one that I'll mention is our Digital Equity Initiative. This actually started in 2020 during the pandemic, as we saw schools, universities make an abrupt transition to learning remotely over Zoom, over the internet. And I think what the pandemic really laid bare is that access, digital literacy, and access to devices are not necessarily equally shared amongst the population. And so for over 3 years now, we have been advocating to ensure that high-speed broadband access is available, and working with partners on the ground to support organizations that do work in and around digital equity. Kenya, I'll throw it over to you so you can talk a little bit more about the Smart Justice Program.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, the Smart Justice Initiative does seek to create innovative pathways towards educational attainment, employment, and economic opportunity for system-impacted communities and people. The Smart Justice Initiative also seeks to just remove barriers to education for those that are currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. And we are also hoping to help the children of those that are incarcerated as well, to strive towards these educational opportunities. So the way that we do this is not just through creating programming, but the Spark Grant cycle that creates partnerships with other organizations that seek to do this as well. We will also now share the Spark Grant program overview. The vision of the Spark Grant program is to fund highly impactful initiatives that would not be possible if they needed to wait through a traditional grant decision timeline. The mission is to introduce an innovative, just-in-time grant-making process to meet the urgent needs of organizations aligned with our focused areas. The commitment is to make decisions on all applications within 6 weeks of our call for proposals closing. And for the timeline, this Smart Justice Grants funding cycle opens on December 6th, 2023, and it closes on December 20th, 2023. And we hope to have decisions for this late January, early February. The Spark Grant program is available to United States-based nonprofits. For this round of funding, we have decided to focus our impact on organizations that are doing work in California. So it could be a national organization, but as long as it has impact within the state of California, they'd be eligible. So organizations whose work does not impact the specific state of California will then be ineligible for this opportunity. We seek to fund efforts that provide scalable solutions that can impact individuals statewide and are not limited to just one particular campus. We also welcome proposals where Michelson Spark Grant funds are part of a larger overall project with multiple funding streams. And I'll kick it back to Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenya. So I'll briefly talk a little bit about the framework that we utilize to evaluate proposals. And we're sort of look at kind of 6 different criteria, and we're going to talk in-depthly about each of these 6. And so the first is baseline criteria. So, as we mentioned, grant ask is up to $25,000. Generally, we are looking for a project that we would be able to fund. These dollars can't be used for general operating expenses, but they would be specifically for a new pilot that you're looking to launch, a new partnership, perhaps a growth within your organization. Hey, we want to expand our work to this area, and this $25,000 is going to allow us to do that. As Kenya mentioned, we are certainly open to having our dollars combined with other dollars. So if our $25 is being kind of put into a larger pot with other funders coming in, we're certainly open to that. We would be interested in learning a bit more about who those other funders are and sort of what the overall fundraising goal is. One of the questions that we often will get asked is, how long is our grant period? We generally leave that up to the organization. So when you all are applying, we'll ask you how many months is this project or is this grant funding for? I would say generally we see our sweet spot within kind of 6 months to 1 year, because $25,000 obviously can't last forever. I will say sometimes on the high end, we will see 18 months or so. That's probably like the absolute limit. I'm seeing a few questions in the chat that I'll just answer super quickly. Is Michelson based in California? Yes, we are an organization based in California, headquartered within Los Angeles. And I apologize, I will try to get to some of these other questions when we get to the Q&A. And again, if you do have questions, the best place to put them in is the Q&A feature, just so that we'll make sure to answer them. We might lose them in the chat. Kenya, I'll throw it over to you to talk a little bit about the specifics of what we are looking to fund for this Smart Justice cycle.
Yeah, I saw that last question wondering about the specific focus areas. Every year we do aim to be intentional about what areas we want to focus on. And so during this year's Spark Grant cycle, we chose the following focus areas. The first one is innovative, scalable programming that builds a going to college culture among the nonprofit ecosystem that serves systems impacted individuals. Currently, there's more resources and programming available to those who have already begun their educational journeys on the inside. We hope to also be able to support those that are already out in the community and want to enroll in college. So these efforts could include efforts that guide formerly incarcerated individuals who have not begun their higher educational journeys to get to and through college universities. Efforts that have developed a roadmap or toolkit that makes higher education one of the priorities of individuals reintegrating into community. The second is efforts focused on mitigating the impact or disruption that prison closures and transfers have on the educational trajectories of individuals enrolled in in-prison college programs. Prison transfers can put educational tracks on pause, and we do hope to support projects that seek to actively pursue and assist these students. The third focus area is efforts looking to scale best practices for in-prison women-focused education and workforce development programming. We are aware that most resources are available to men in men's prisons due to the higher number of incarcerated men as opposed to the amount of incarcerated women. However, we also believe that supporting women can also aid entire family units, and because the needs can be different to those of men, we are wanting to be intentional about supporting incarcerated women. The last focus area is multi-generational programming that supports the children of incarcerated individuals and prevents the school-to-prison pipeline. So when someone is incarcerated, we know it doesn't just affect the individual, but can also affect the entire family unit. We do hope to support programming that seeks to provide the children of incarcerated people with opportunities for healing and education. And efforts are not limited, but can include those that address trauma and mental health needs of children, efforts that maintain the parent-child bond during incarceration, mentoring programs geared toward college access and success, and workforce development opportunities for youth and young adults.
And I'll just quickly mention one of the questions that we often get asked is, can I apply? So when you submit your LOI, you'll select which focus area your grant will be addressing. One of the questions is often, well, what if my project hits multiple of these focus areas? You can certainly select that. It wouldn't necessarily give you a leg up or anything like that. Excuse me. But it will kind of give us a better sense of the work that you're doing. I generally tell people, try to kind of select the focus area that you think is kind of best aligned with the work that you're going to do to be successful.
So continuing with how we will be evaluating these proposals, we look at the potential impact of grants. So how many individuals will the grant impact? In an ideal case scenario, what is the impact of the project? And then the worst case scenario, what would be the impact of the project? In addition to how likely is it that the project is successful? We also look at the measurability of impact. So how effective are the proposed metrics for measuring success for the project? How realistic is the proposed project impact and the project timeline?
And I'll just quickly mention in here as well. So we will ask you all as part of your LOI, please identify your 3 KPIs or key performance indicators, 3 key metrics that you will use to track progress for this grant. So we'll be asking you all to sort of tell us how you're measuring the effectiveness of this grant.
We will also be looking at the long-term organization sustainability. So through our Spark Grant cycle, we are hoping to build partnerships. We don't just want it to be like a one and done deal, which is why we look for sustainability and scalability. So under sustainability, we look for your current team and partners, your business model, and the existing resources and revenue streams. For the scalability, we support system-level strategies that can create impact at scale and inform public policy. This includes but is not limited to initiatives, partnerships, programs, models, and research whose outcomes will have a regional effect. Awesome.
So I'll talk a little bit about kind of the nuts and bolts of how you go about applying. So if you go to our website, 20mm.org/spark-grants, and you can see an old screenshot here, but the kind of top part is generally still the same. You'll just click on Spark Grants at the top. That will bring you to our Spark Grants landing page. And the portal to submit your LOI will be available on December 6th, and then that will remain open until December 20th. And you'll see there's a submit a proposal button. That is not live right now, so you won't be able to do that. However, on that site right now are 2 things that might be helpful to you. We have put PDF versions of the LOI as well as full application available for download. So if you wanted to start to prepare those materials in advance of the December 6th launch, you're certainly able to do that. We do review applications on an ongoing basis from when they come in. So I would certainly encourage people to apply early. And you will get a copy of your application, your LOI when you submit it. And that's all done through our portal Submittable, which we'll talk about right now. So when you log in and create an account on Submittable, that will be our grant management platform. And then we'll be communicating with you all through that. If you're awarded a grant, you will do all your reporting, your financial information, et cetera, through that platform. This is a look at the grant committee. So these are the folks that will be kind of reviewing the proposals. Obviously, Kenya and myself. We also have our colleague, Miguel Leon, who's our Director of Programs and Strategic Initiatives. And then our CEO and COO, Phil Kim, and then Myra Lombera as well. And then Kenya, I'll let you talk a little bit about some of our community advisors who have helped not only shape our focus areas, but also then will help us to kind of evaluate proposals.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. As I mentioned before, we do hope to be very intentional about the work that we do and the grants that we give. So in order to be intentional about our grants, we convene the Spark Community Advisors. So these are individuals that will assist us with the decision-making process as well. And with our Spark Community Advisors, we have Paul Seaman. He's the co-chair of the Education Committee within LARP, the Los Angeles Regional Reentry Partnership. We also have Cheryl Lamar, who is the program coordinator with Unapologetically Hers. We also have Edward Bejar, who's an undergraduate student at CSU LA and is also part of Project Rebound. And we have Maria Martinez, who is a graduate student working on her MBA in Cal Poly Pomona. Now we're going to take a look at the evaluation process. So once the LOIs are submitted, the grant committee will do an initial assessment. And within 6 business days, you will be notified if your proposal is moving forward in the process. So the next step would be the application process. Full applications will then be assessed, and applications designated to be finalists will be reviewed by the Spark Community Advisors. We may schedule follow-up calls with those that advance to the finalist stage if the grant committee requires additional information. You will be notified of the grant committee decision within 6 weeks of our call for proposals closing. Just a little bit of background information we get about 45 LOIs submitted, and about 25% of those move to the second round of scrutiny. LOIs should be brief, so about 500-word abstract on the project, and we hope to fund from 3 to 4 proposals. It is important to note that we intentionally designed and developed this process to be mindful of your time and resources, which is why we only proceed to give applications to those LOIs that did resonate with our focus areas. And now I will talk a little bit about past Smart Justice awardees. So one of them is the Campaign for College Opportunity. The Campaign for College Opportunity strengthens higher education access and success through 3 main strategies: policy, advocacy, partnerships, and public awareness. Our grant helped launch the campaign's CJ initiative, which features interviews with current system-impacted students pursuing higher education to identify barriers and resources that students face, culminating in policy recommendations. Another former awardee is the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program. FFRP provides career support to formerly incarcerated firefighters and currently incarcerated individuals who are interested in careers in the wildland and forestry sector. Our grant supported FFRP in their expansion to the Bay Area, where they are now providing more training services in SoCal and now the Bay Area. Another awardee is Impact Justice, which is a national innovative and research center advancing new ideas and solutions for justice reform. The organization was founded in 2015 on an idea to create an organization that would imagine, innovate, and accept absolutely nothing about the status quo of our current justice system. And our Spark Grant supported their California Justice Leaders AmeriCorps program, which elevates justice-involved young adults as peer navigators and community leaders.
And I think this is a really cool example for 2 reasons. So we actually awarded them 2 grants over the past 4 years or so. The first was to support the sort of launch of this program, which, obviously our dollars were sort of one piece of that launch. But then a few years down the line, they came to us and they said, hey, our program has been going on now for, 3+ years. We have over 100 alumni. we would like to kind of strengthen our alumni network and provide programming and things like that. So it was very great to sort of be able to support this effort when it first launched, and then another opportunity to support them sort of when they were at a key growth point within the work that they're doing.
And then another former Spark Grant awardee is the UCI Lifted program. So our grant supported a replicable demonstration project to establish the first University of California bachelor's degree granting program in a California state prison. It is now their second year, and how Ryan mentioned, we had given Impact Justice a follow-up grant. We also did this with the UCI Lifted program because now that they're going into their second year, during the summer, they had like a peer mentorship program where students that are formerly incarcerated at the University of California in Irvine were now mentoring the students that were within the UCI Lifted program, so at the Dawn of Eight State Prison campus. So it was just a grant that we had given them so that the students within UCI Lifted could see what it would be like to be a student on the outside, and they help them create community projects and are helping them throughout their educational journeys as well.
So
Ryan,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'll let you highlight the other awardees.
Thank you, Kenya. I'll talk a little bit about some of our non-Smart Justice Spark Grant awardees. And again, just to give you sort of a snapshot of the type of projects that we generally have funded in the past. So the first is Unite LA, and this was through our digital equity work. Unite LA launched the Los Angeles Digital Equity Action League, or LA Deal. It was a regional community-driven consortium that advocated for eliminating the digital divide here in California. Again, our dollars were sort of one of many that kind of pooled together to help launch this. And then they have been able to really grow and have a massive impact within the DE space within kind of the larger Los Angeles area. Young Invincibles, I like this grant because it's a really interesting grant, and it's focused on implementation of policy, which is something that we're often interested here within Michelson. So the California Community College system receives an influx of dollars in and around student basic needs centers. And so Young Invincibles executed a student research project to look at the efficacy of those basic needs centers, look to see what has been developed, and then what issues are still occurring in making sure that students have access to those resources on campus. US PIRG, or US Public Interest Research Group, is another strong partner of ours through our open educational resources work. Our grant funded a report analyzing, and this was back in 2019, analyzing what at the time the textbook industry was transitioning to, which is a new automatic billing framework, or what they call inclusive access. So essentially, students are automatically charged for instructional materials, sort of captured within a particular market. So this report has been really a huge success from our perspective because it has driven the policy conversation around sort of what protections should be put in place for these particular students. This report has been cited in numerous class action lawsuits against publishers, and has also driven legislation not only here in California, but across the state. Again, just as a reminder, we'll be reaching kind of the end of this soon. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A section, and then we will certainly answer those in a few short minutes here. So the last project that I'll focus on is out of our Student Basic Needs Initiative, and as I mentioned, we particularly have a focus within that work on our pregnant and parenting students. And so we partnered with Cal State Long Beach to essentially look at what they are doing on their campus and create a model of practice for how campuses within the CSU system can support those pregnant and parenting students. So not only was it documenting sort of best practices and recommendations that were occurring on Cal State Long Beach, but then also taking that resource and taking those learnings and spreading it sort of across the CSU system so that other institutions can sort of learn from the opportunity and the experiences that CSULB has had. So hopefully those were snapshots of the types of proposals that would interest the committee. Kenny, I know we have another event coming up next week, so maybe you can share a little bit about that in case anyone on the call is interested in joining.
Yeah, we would like to inform you of a webinar that we are having next week. It is kicking off a webinar series that we're titling the Pathways from Prison to College, California's Best Practices in Action. We previously had a webinar series which was focusing on these best practices. And now we are going to focus on organizations within California that are already doing this great work. So we will be learning from the organization that is Homeboy Industries and their education programming. So we do hope that you all are able to join us on Wednesday, December 6th. It will be at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
And I just dropped a link in the chat if you would like to learn a little bit more about that. So we'll open it up to Q&A now, and we'll sort of go through some of the questions that were submitted. Here's our contact information. If you all are interested in reaching out, touching base with us, we're certainly happy to have conversations with people in advance of the cycle opening, in advance of you all submitting a proposal. I think we always want to act as a resource for organizations. So if you all are thinking, hey, I think this might be a fit, but I'm not quite sure, feel free to send us an email. We're always happy to provide feedback. It would be best to hop on a quick 30-minute call. We're open to that as well. So please feel free to shoot us an email. I'd rather sort of have a back and forth over email and save you all some time and say, oh, this isn't quite the right fit for us. Or conversely, if it is a good fit, we can provide with some feedback and say, I think our grant committee would be interested in that, but please be sure to include information X, Y, and Z to sort of give us a holistic picture. And with that, I'll jump into the Q&A. I know I saw a few questions both in the chat and in the Q&A around workforce development and sort of whether our Spark Grant cycle is focused primarily on higher education or if there's a workforce element. So we're certainly open to workforce development, other opportunities to gain skills for individuals who have been involved in the criminal justice system. Again, it would just have to sort of fall under one of those focus areas, but certainly open to that. Let's see some of the other questions. Yep, I think we just answered the workforce question. Can you send the direct link that that shows previous submitted LOI to use as a guideline? So we don't have any LOIs that are available to review from organizations that have submitted. That's actually a great suggestion and perhaps something we can do in the future. We do have a copy of the LOI just available for you all on our website. I just dropped the link in to that question, and I'll drop it in the chat as well. So if you wanted to go ahead and download it, you would be able to find that there. Are projects that support education other than higher education considered? For example, legal education, know your rights, education, etc. I think high level, yes. Again, it would be sort of focused on, it would need to fall under one of the focus areas that we had identified. And again, that link that I just dropped in the chat, if you scroll down, it actually has the focus areas listed out for you. Yeah, if it were to fall under one of those, but not necessarily be within kind of that higher education space, definitely an option. But again, if you want to talk more specifics about what you're thinking, feel free to send us an email. For the Smart Justice program, is it required for the programs to serve formerly incarcerated individuals? When you say system impacted, what does that mean? Kenya, do you want to maybe take this question? I think we're certainly open to grants that would impact, family members of people that are incarcerated, but I know you have been thinking about this issue a little bit.
Yeah, so when we do say systems impacted individuals, it includes individuals that are impacted by the carceral system. So they could be formerly incarcerated, currently incarcerated, or like children, wives or husbands of those that are incarcerated. But with it being, the Smart Justice program, it is with the focus of those that are impacted by those that are incarcerated or incarcerated themselves.
There was an anonymous question. You mentioned support for operating. Can you discuss what that might include relevant to education for incarcerated students? I'm not quite sure exactly what you're asking. I know I mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kenya.
I think it was when we mentioned, I think you briefly touched on, we are okay with like paying for like the staff of specific programs or the operations costs of specific programs. I think that's kind of what the question is alluding to.
Yeah, so I guess to reiterate, we don't fund general operating expense grants. So our dollars need to sort of be aligned to a specific body of work, a specific project that y'all are working on. But yes, we do allow our dollars to be used to fund staff time. So it's, hey, we're going to be taking this staff member and having 10% of their time on this particular project. We're open to that. If that didn't answer your question, please feel free to reach out and we can talk specifics. Do you have a template for the full proposal or funded example from previous rounds? Again, we don't have any previous examples of a completed application that was funded. Certainly something that we can think about providing in the future. That full application is available to download. And just to sort of provide some additional context, and I think we said this earlier, but we will invite individuals to complete that full application. So the first thing you'll be submitting is that LOI, which we'll review. As Kenya mentioned, that meat and potatoes of it is really that 500-word abstract around what your project is, as well as a bunch of sort of demographic information about your organization. But yeah, I hope that answers that question. Brandon, are there similar grant offerings within the same parameters available outside of California? I don't know with the exact same parameters, but there are certainly funding opportunities that are available outside of California for people doing work in this space. Brandon, if you want to maybe send Kenya an email, we'd be happy to talk a little bit more and learn about kind of the work that you're doing. And if we have any funding partners that focus in the geographical area that you are in, we're always willing to sort of make introductions. We are at a higher education institution and have created an MOU with Project Bridge. We are going to offer mentorship and information regarding higher education. Will this qualify for the grant? Bridge, the city's gang intervention serves youth gang at risk. Okay, thank you for that information, Estella. I was not familiar with Project Bridge. I think that would qualify because it seems like you all would fall under the programming that builds a going to college culture. But again, I think perhaps shooting us a specifics via email might be helpful. I don't know, Kenya, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it would fall under that focus area. I think it definitely sounds like it aligns with the focus area, but if you do want to send me an email, we can also have a one-on-one conversation on that.
Are programs based at college campuses eligible, provided that their work falls within one of the focus areas? Yes, absolutely. Certainly eligible. We've funded programs at colleges in the past. Oftentimes we'll work through the foundation of a college to sort of route those dollars, but yeah, we can kind of work with whatever is best for an individual school. Could these grants be used for formerly incarcerated academic credible messengers to run workshops in high school working with gang-involved students? I think so. Again, I think that that would probably be that sort of focus on a going to college culture, as well as that like multi-generational approach. So again, without knowing too much about the specifics, and Ryan, please feel free to shoot us an email. Yes, I think that that would be eligible. I don't know, Kenya, if you have any thoughts or disagree.
Yeah, I definitely, so Ryan did email me, I believe,
Oh,
yesterday.
beautiful.
So yeah, definitely, Ryan, I think your idea falls within two of our focus areas, so would definitely recommend for you to pursue the grant opportunity.
Awesome. And then I think, okay, I see a question in the chat from Doug. Is this available for halfway houses, getting people into education after TBI treatment, which I believe is traumatic brain injury treatment? Doug, we'd probably need to learn a little bit more about the specifics of your organization. So again, I would just recommend shooting us an email. It's tough to answer that just with the information you've given us. I don't see, oh, one more question. Must a nonprofit apply, or can this be a state college/university? Yes, certainly we've, and I apologize if I didn't answer this earlier, but schools can apply. If you are based at a school, we are very interested in learning what you're doing, and then again, we can figure out the best way to route dollars if we decide to fund the work. Can you share a little bit more about what you are looking for in terms of scalability for the Spark grants? Are there key aspects of a project that you are looking for that would make it appropriately scalable for the committee's perspective? That's a great question. I think, so I guess UCI Lifted is probably a great example. And I know, Kenya, you highlighted that earlier. I think we see that as scalable for two reasons. So one, it's the first in-prison bachelor's program for the UC system. And they're focused, is it sociology, Kenya? Or I don't remember what the degree specifically was.
Yeah, it's sociology degree.
Gotcha. So the idea being, that could scale within UCI, right? Where we could hopefully offer other degree opportunities at the institution. But then also it could scale across the UC system. Now, obviously that's not going to happen with like our grant dollars, but we see sort of like the potential for a scalability of the work. I think similarly, the US PIRG research report that we funded is another example of sort of scale, right? It's obviously it's a research report, but then what does that research report allow others to do, and how can others sort of take that research report and then kind of continue work within the field or within the space? So Stella, I hope that answers your question, and definitely feel free to reach out if any other information could be helpful. Would policy-related projects be considered? For example, non-lobbying advocacy for bills that are related to one of the focus areas. So yes, as long as it's related to the focus areas, we certainly would support policy projects. We are not able to fund lobbying activities, so I appreciate that sort of caveat in the question. So, if there is a bill, our dollars would not be eligible to advocate for a specific bill. But we can certainly have dollars go towards educating policymakers, lawmakers on specific issues that impact these particular populations. And Mira, if you want to shoot us a specific around what you're thinking, we can certainly provide you with a bit more specific feedback and context. Great. Well, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So I think we'll probably wrap here, but really can't thank everyone enough for joining us. Please, as you're thinking about whether or not this is a good opportunity for you, if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Kenya or myself. And then one last question. Would you consider supporting efforts towards data acquisition? Again, it's very tough to answer that without more context. So I would encourage you to shoot us an email. But thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day. And we'll look forward to reviewing proposals starting on December 6th. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.